Guys, welcome back to the Contact Onsite podcast. Today we're hosting Oscar Medellin. He is the Information Technology Manager at Sheehan Nagle Hartray Architects. Hope I got all that right.
Yes, it's a mouthful. You got it right, Eliyahu.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so thank you very much for getting on the podcast.
Thank you.
And we always start off with, just tell us about yourself.
Yes. Thank you so much. Good morning from Chicago, Eliyahu. Again, my name is Oscar Medellin. I live in Chicago, so it's very cold here today. Thank you again for the invitation. I think really briefly, I'm a husband, I'm a father of two. I read way too many books on my off time, and I love walking old cities and urban sketching. As you mentioned, I am the Information Technology Manager at Sheehan Nagle Hartray Architects, and I also host a podcast / video series on YouTube called ITM for Architects, where we talk about cybersecurity, IT governance, apps, and IT budgets. I think that covers it pretty well, Eliyahu. Thanks.
If you're not following Oscar by now, you should. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, just search ITM for Architects on YouTube.
So first of all, thank you. Amazing. It sounds like you're doing a lot, and it sounds like a super interesting podcast. Maybe today we'll transition to the next important question: is what are you doing today, and how did you get to what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. So today I help architects deliver hyperscale data centers. I've been an AEC professional for more than 15 years. As I mentioned, I'm the IT manager here at SNHA, and over the years, I've served as a CAD manager. I've served as a BIM manager, BIM coordinator at other firms. I got my start pretty early. I was about 19 years old when I got my first job. At least in the Garage Architects, I used to program AutoCAD. I made tools, tool palettes, menus. Was really into Autolisp back in the day. So that's how I got where I am. I started very young. I was always interested in computers, and I just couldn't get enough of working at that intersection of technology and architecture. So been doing it ever since, and I can't give it up. So I'll be doing it for as long as I can, Eliyahu.
Amazing. I think that's a very I think it's very unique getting involved at such a young age, and also having that mindfulness. A lot of times in the industry, it's not that common to see people with such a keen interest for technology and design. So first of all, we could really break off on that. How does that feel? Being being relatively unique.
Yeah, no, it was one of those life stories that you can never make up. I was the kid in my family that drew every day. I loved to draw watercolor, but my brother was interested in computers. He's a programmer even today. So we were very lucky that he was able to finagle a computer from our family friend when she was going to throw it away, and bring it home, and he just started coding on it, and he let me draw on it when we were little, right? I said, hey, what is that thing? And he let me get on the computer and draw on the computer, and never turned back ever since, because it was just something that was just amazing that I shared with my brother, with my family, and it was the brand new thing, right? And many years later, it turned out to be that computer that people were throwing away and actually gave us for free. It turned out many years later, I found that was actually a Next 2 computer. So it had the gray background with the purple icons, and who knew that it was one of those Next computers? And I remember thinking, wow, we had a Next computer. We never even knew that we had one. So that's my little story there for the first computer I ever stepped in front of.
Wow. Super interesting. I mean, I think it's amazing that being young, that passion for a computer, like being resourceful to get one in the first place, and then using it and developing your skill set, taking you where you are today. That's super interesting.
Exactly. That's important for young people. Just start where you're at. It doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to have the latest gadget. Whatever you can get, and it just goes to, again, to your point, right, of the passion, that if you really like something, you'll play that sport that you love in old shoes because you love playing the sport. It doesn't matter what the shoes are.
Yes, definitely. If you guys are listening, great advice here.
Yes. Just get started. Start where you're at. Yeah, just get started. Yep.
I'm a big believer in that. I think also in business in general.
Yes.
It's just one of the most important things. Just get started, kick off, do things. There's something called traction luck, traction luck, and just from doing stuff, things that happen to come up. And great advice. Thank you very much. Very insightful also. So I think you've had a ton of exposure, to the industry, definitely from design standpoint. And, would you be able to share with us, throughout your years in the industry, what have you been exposed to in terms of different technology and different opportunities?
Yeah, this was an easy one. Let's not make it too complicated. I mean, I remember learning AutoCAD Release 12 when I was in secondary school, and I remember being there as a young professional in 2000, 2001 when parametric modeling software really hit the market in a big way and really changed everything. So for me, I always go back to that very, very finite point in time when everything changed, when it wasn't 2D anymore, when it wasn't drafting anymore, when it really became that 3D modeled building that we could actually make mistakes on, that we could actually build in the computer to its fullness. So I remember that vividly growing up. The introduction of Pro E, the introduction of CATIA, and of course, Gary's Bilboa Museum making news all over the world. I mean, I was still in secondary school, high school, what they call it in the States, high school here, secondary school everywhere else. I still remember vividly seeing that in magazines and just seeing the entire building, the computer being built fully and in 3 dimensions for all its pieces and needs and wants, and just having that impact, for us of that age, that was a big shift. That was the next shift that came along, the great disruption that came along. So for me, that's where it starts. Obviously, later on, you get into, the powerful graphics that we have now, the powerful real-time learning that we have now, data center, high compute nodes that we have now. So, but for me, I still go back to that moment where everything changed and everything went from 2D to 3D. And that's usually an easy one to say. I think in our industry, that's an easy one to always bring up. That's sort of the easy answer, but it's important to go back to those first moments of when innovation really changes things. And we can point across other industries and see the same thing happen, right? The introduction of the smartphone, getting away from physical keyboards, getting a phone in your hand that really has a flat screen that can be anything you want it to be. Going back to the days of General Magic and all those wonderful stories of those new things that really, really did change things. And now those things are ubiquitous and they really have changed the way that we live.
I think it's really, so many people saw this thing happen and didn't realize the value of it and didn't realize the potential of it, right?
Yes.
So how have you seen, like throughout maybe even an example from a construction or from your involvement with design teams, something that you really feel was convincing enough, or like many people didn't see a trend early on, but when was like a time you really first saw a trend being implemented?
I think for me, once a technology hits a certain adoption, right, you get over the first stages of adoption of technology, which is you get the innovators to adopt something new. Usually it's pretty easy for new innovators and new people to adopt new things, but eventually a technology has enough capacity, enough traction where it really, really starts to convince a lot more people, and it really sort of has that tipping point moment. So for me, it really was the introduction of iPads into the construction area, getting away from physical drawings and things like that, where really, really start to speed up the processes that we were using pretty much across the firm. Letting go of printers, letting go of all of this paper trail of things that were going on, and really those devices that get in front of us really simplify things. We can get into, nowadays it's going to be the next phase is going to be, all the different goggles we're going to have, all the different headsets we're going to have, heads-up displays that we're going to have. But I think for me, it's really just that continuing trend of we can now build the building in the computer. We can now see the drawings in our hand. And how is that going to change everything going forward? Because soon you're not going to have anything in your hand. You're going to have it on your head with a visor.
Super interesting. That's an interesting take. Usually, what you're referring to here is just the accessibility, right, to digital tools on site or in the office. Like an iPad really helped transition. Right, made a very big difference.
Yeah. Because that really is the it's not necessarily a tipping point, but I remember an old saying of a billionaire and a regular person can buy the same Coca-Cola, right? There's no Coca-Cola for someone that has more money. It's the same, and that has become true now of technology. There isn't a better iPhone or a better Android phone that you can get. Everyone gets the same thing, and it's only when we can get to that point. Henry Ford sold his car for many, many years, and it wasn't until he got it to a certain price that it was accessible to everyone. And so for us, it really isn't until we get to that point where all those different tools are accessible to everyone, and everyone can use them well, that we then level up, across every part of our job, right? Because now all those things are accessible to everyone. Everybody can use them, and in the same way, with the same tools in hand.
Amazing. So like really what you're also like describing here, right, is that the barrier of entry is pretty low, right? It's like it's very accessible and people could use. How do you feel that impacted, like in terms of the environment, in terms of collaboration, communication between teams? There's like a whole like paperless, which you kind of referred to, but then there's a whole another sphere of just communication, working together with digital copies and so forth.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty relevant topic for us today. A lot of our internal communications for our team now isn't really happening anymore via email. And I mean, email is 30, 40 years old now. I mean, even Ray Tomlinson, who was the inventor of email, he actually passed away a couple of years ago. So when we're thinking of communication, it's a little bit disheartening that even today, a lot of us still rely on email when we have persistent communicators on our, in our pockets, on our iPads, on our computers. And so I was happy to see that in the last couple of years, especially after the pandemic, that a lot of our internal collaboration is happening in a persistent chat style, not in an email style where I'm sending you a one sentence email, Eliyahu, to ask you a question. And then you send me a 4-word email saying what the answer is. And then I send you a 1-word email saying, okay. I'm really, really happy that thankfully that is going away. And hopefully it'll be gone, pretty soon here. But I think for me that instant communication, that persistent communication, starts to then get rid of the old technology that really isn't helping anymore. Because why do I need verification of me sending you that message, right? I don't need sort of a mailbox full of these sheets of sort of digital paper to let me know that you sent me a message. I just need to get on with my day, basically, I think is the point. And for most people, they've discovered that, through the pandemic, that it was just easier to communicate through a chat style, to communicate through software, to communicate through issue tracking, to communicate through something like BIM-Track, where I'm just tracking an issue. I don't need to send you a message. I don't need to bug you with notifications. I'm just going to put the issue in BIM-Track. I'm going to track it there. And then we're all happy, right? I don't have to check 50 different screens to see what the state of things are. And so as we move forward, I think that agile, very, very quick communication will just make things better across the board.
Okay, so really, like we talk from paperless to the concept of like the communication that's more accessible now because it's on you in terms of the machinery and also the format in terms of chat and also products and softwares that are helping communicate less, right? Verbally, but also or in text and more in activities like BIM tracking and so forth. So super interesting.
I had a great conversation. Sorry to jump into it. I had a great conversation with a company called Relay Pro. They make a really, really nice puck. It looks like a little square. It's made of plastic, but it has some nice metal, endoskeleton, exoskeleton, whatever you want to call it. And it's a instant communicator. So I just tap it. If you anybody on your podcast remembers the old Nextel phones from way back in the day, you just tap it and you connect to your team. And your team could be all over the world. They could be, on the construction site. They could be right next to you. And it's a really, really great instant communication device. I just tap it and I talk to you and I ask you the question and you give me the answer. I don't have to send you an email. I don't have to type. So I'm really looking forward to now the different form factors that we'll have for those persistent communicators. Maybe they'll be in a headset form. Maybe they'll be in something that you wear on you while you're wearing your construction, safety equipment. You'll have that little tap that you can use. And I mean, even nurses in the U.S. use those today. So I'm really, really, optimistic about how that will change, our industry to just help us communicate better and faster, because I don't have time to send you an email. Just give me the answer.
Love it. So this leads us into the next question, which is what is the most needed technology or advancement that the industry requires today, in your opinion?
Yes. Yeah, I get this question asked a lot of the times, and I answer differently because I don't want to give sort of an answer everybody else gives. So I'm going to answer different on this one, Eliyahu. So for me, I wish there was a database of all the problems. I don't know why we don't have that. So in programming, when you program something, when you need to code something, you use these concepts. They're called API. You think of a pie, right? Abstraction, polymorphism, encapsulation, and inheritance, or encapsulation and inheritance. And when you code, you have to know what the problem is before you can code anything. And you have to declare those variables so you can actually solve the problem. So if you don't know what the problem is, you can't program anything, you can't code anything because you don't know what you're solving for. So I wish there was, and the National Academy of, in the US, the National Academy of Engineers has a list, the 14 Grand Challenge of Engineering. The National Academy of Sciences has that for the sciences here in the US. But I wish we had a database that declared all the problems for AEC and how to solve them. Because if we know what the problems are, then we know how to solve them. Because I mean, two quick examples. We have digital assistants right in our pocket. We can pull up our digital assistants and they can find a restaurant for us. I'm hopeful that we'll have persistent assistants pretty soon here on our desktops and our iPads. So for example, maybe one day, ChatGPT will be connected to an assistant, right? And you can ask ChatGPT to write you a curtain wall specification. You can do that now. We have folks in our office that have been messing around with that to see what we can ask ChatGPT, see what it can do. And if you ask it to write a curtain wall specification, it'll write one. I mean, it's not great, but it'll write the specification. So that's pretty cool. But I wonder if we need that kind of supercomputer kind of help to write specifications, right? Is that a problem that we have? Should we be spending time on that gigantic problem with a gigantic solution, or is it not that big of a problem? Same thing for things like the Spot robot, right? It inspects, construction progress. It can create a digital twin. I'm pretty sure that's a pretty big problem, so you probably should be working on that. It's a good thing that Boston Dynamics is working on that, because that's a pretty big need, right, for a lot of construction folks to inspect places where it's dangerous to inspect for people, to do those tasks and maybe a little bit too dangerous for people to do. So I wish there was a database that somebody would do this to catalog all the problems that we have, so that we know what we're actually trying to solve for. And if you already found a problem or a solution for a problem, then I don't have to sort of figure out on my own. I can just go to your list and put the solution in place. And you see other companies doing this, like Hypar. They're trying to do a little bit of that work by trying to figure out all of the standard building types and standard templates for those kind of things, so that people don't have to start from scratch. So that's a little bit of a different answer, but I like to give those kind of answers because I don't want to give answers other people always give when they're asked this question, because I think it'd be really helpful for everyone to know what we're working for, what are we trying to solve.
Yeah, great. I think first of all, I love the answer because it's really, I think, one of the biggest efforts. We're also involved in Global Construction Tech on a certain level is involved in. I think this is part of the point of the podcast, right? Where you put on people in construction and people who are part of the execution, who are very closely involved, and they could share part of those issues. And I think a lot of times the feeling is that the guys from the tech guys, the guys coming up with innovation, different solutions, a lot of times it feels like they're sitting in some ivory tower and disconnected from the execution, from the actual application of it in the field, right? Which is why we feel there's such an importance to the podcast. So first of all, to uncover what are those real challenges that are currently existing, and then also what it looks like to get it executed, and what was an example of a good execution of a product. I think that's a big part of what this podcast is, and so you're contributing to that problem right now. Thank you.
Yes.
And
I'm also part of the problem. Yes.
But we're all part of it, and we're all trying to figure it out and to make it even better. Yeah, but I love the response, because it's really there, right? That's really it. I think like one of the jobs of me and my team is always to dig and understand the problem just a little bit better. And so I also think that there's a lot of, I'd say a lot of people, a lot of founders who are lost, or innovators that are lost, that don't understand why their solution isn't addressing, the challenges that they're seeing. And one of the challenges about that within problem finding is that it's so different across different projects. There's so many variables involved in construction, and that makes it a little bit tricky. But I think you also discussed something else, which is a semi-solution for it, which is a standardization of different coding and statutes, and I find that to be also super interesting. And you did answer at the end of what you thought, and you gave a few good examples, including companies that are helping to create some sort of database of the standards and how to cope with some of the different variables in the industry. Yeah.
And even to some of the points you're making about construction, right? A lot of us forget, especially because, we want to subscribe to this sort of idea that technology will be the answer. But for me, I was lucky enough to sort of see, even when I started my first job, there was still a gentleman in my office that would do everything by hand. He drew by hand. My very, very first job, there was a gentleman that drew by hand at his desk, and they had to give him, an intern to put everything, that he was drawing into into AutoCAD back then. But we forget that we're building things that are very old, right? Very, very old technology, right? We're building buildings, and that's not a new thing, right? That's not, we're not inventing new materials to build these buildings with. We're not inventing sort of, these new living sort of machines that, that is going to, we're going to live in this futuristic sort of place, right? We're building things that are very old, right? People's shelters, people's homes, where people are going to sleep, where they're going to, have their family, have their memories. And that's not necessarily something that's new, right? That's something that's very old. So I think a lot of us forget that we're building something that's very old and very, very important. And sometimes maybe we need to figure something else out, not just how to do it better, faster, cheaper, quicker, with less paper. And I can see it in my goggles, right? Immediately when I'm on the job site, because it's a building. It's not the space station. So it's different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. For sure. I think I very much agree. I think it's very insightful, like to really say that there is a distinction in terms of relating to buildings also as a technology, but eventually it's a type of solution, right? And maybe this also reminds me of a conversation I had back then with a chief engineer of a really good, a really interesting construction firm, and we were just talking about how living environments is just perceived to be just, this is how it is, this is how we live. But truthfully, there's so much innovation to be integrated, and even how maybe our needs shifted, maybe we don't need to live, and maybe our living structure are different, maybe common areas like co-working spaces, right? Have innovated the way that we look at space in general. Anyway, so it's a fun rabbit hole to dive into, but I'm going to try to avoid it. We'll go into the next one of conversation, which is actually kind of, what are the hurdles that you've been seeing in adopting technology? Yes,
that's another tough one. Hurdles to adoption. That's a pretty tough one. I always go back to that great statement of the fallacy of the appeal of novelty. In pop culture, we always call it the shiny object syndrome, right? That a lot of people have a lot of appropriate, useful technology at their fingertips, but of course, if something shiny comes along, like, I'm just going to get the shiny thing. Why am I going to use the useful thing when I can use the shiny thing, right? That's why it's so easy to buy the shiny red car. So I think one of the biggest barriers is that, right, that we're just always going to be distracted by whatever's new and shiny, whatever's going to be the newest thing that's going to come in the market here. And then, of course, the things that are useful, the things that are appropriate, the things that are scaled to your problem, right? Those are often misunderstood. You think you need sort of this solution when you actually only need this solution, or you need some other solution because you're trying to just go with the next fad. So I think that's one of the big things, that we all have to be, pretty mindful of, to say, what do I actually need to do to adopt this technology? What steps do I need to take? What's the process of building that service and putting it in place, and not just sort of going with the latest fad that comes along, and we all see it in the same news feeds like everybody else. Everybody wants to do, AI powered rendering now, and that's all great and good. But I think an experienced designer would give a client a better solution any day of the week, because that's what they do, and they know what doesn't work.
That's super. I like that, because usually when we're talking about the hurdles, it has to do, a lot of times it's people, the traditional element of the industry. But here, there's a certain element of a very, I guess, just a very unfocused way potentially of looking at it, and just being distracted in pursuing shiny opportunities versus real ones. I think it also relates a lot to something that I get a lot from construction companies is their appetite. A lot of times is like their appetite is they're hungry, but they really do not know how to even relate to the technology opportunities. And I'll also say there's this challenge of, I call it crawl, walk, run, as a healthy process of growing up. And a lot of times companies are just trying to jump at an opportunity that looks as a very exciting opportunity, but don't realize that there's so much work to be done to own up, right? To the application of the bells and whistles of the opportunity. They have to figure it out.
or even sorry to jump in, even in the technology space, right? That you were delivering projects yesterday. You delivered projects many years ago with technology that we wouldn't even touch today, right? I mean, everybody was delivering projects, with Windows XP, right? People were delivering, projects with, Revit, 2008, right? You were delivering projects in the past without all these bells and whistles. Why do you think you need the bells and whistles in the future to then deliver those projects? Yes, because they'll be more difficult. There'll be more stringent rules, put on you. But you did a great job yesterday. You used your computer yesterday and it was working fine. There is no immediate sort of need to just buy the next thing. If anything, again, to your point, it's more about what can I do better this time around, that I didn't do really that great last time. Is there something I can improve? Can I improve my scheduling? Can I improve my safety on my job site? Can I maybe purchase, some monitoring for my, construction vest that let me know when people are in the wrong spot throughout the workday? And there's great solutions for that, right? I mean, that's what 5D, 6D BIM and 8D BIM is all about, right? It's about safety, making sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. Because if they're not, maybe there's a pinch point here and there, and maybe there'll be an accident because people are not where they're supposed to be. And if I have a small device on my vest that lets me know that I'm not in the right place, that's helpful. That keeps people safe. But again, that I'm doing better based on me, right? Trying to be better tomorrow, not necessarily trying to follow the next fad. Just because, like you said, it's an opportunity that maybe I'll miss out on, and now things will be, sort of terrible, but that's just sort of a fabrication of our own minds. It's not true, because you were delivering project yesterday and everything was fine.
And it taps into the, I would say, the distinction between technology and innovation. When there's a rush a lot of times to run after technology, which is just new product, something new in the market that's doing something that sometimes could be shiny. I think many times are also useful, but sometimes it could just look shiny. Versus innovation, which is a process of looking at a problem from a new angle or trying to do something in a way that hasn't been considered significantly enough before, being willing to change up a process. So just rather than having this intuitive, or I'm not trying to say intuitive, impulsive kind of purchasing, right? And purchasing, spree, go into figuring out what your processes are, what they look like, and what could be improved in them. And then maybe it'll give a good leeway, or a good way to consider the technologies and tools that you're using today, but not just for the sake of changing it up and keeping up with a different changing market.
Or even to go back to the original example of if we had that list of the challenges in front of us, right? One of the things that I've been pretty mindful of was, do we have anybody working on, advanced, what do they call it? There's these different tools for advanced online learning, where it can actually personalize entire programs for you, as far as, if you need to learn a skill, and it's a very big skill to learn, right? You just don't go to school for years and years and years. There's actually now a lot of companies working on those advanced personalized education tools, and that seems pretty important for us, right, in the AEC industry. For the next generation of young people that are going to be the builders of things tomorrow. Should they be focusing on the shiny thing, or should they be focusing on learning better, doing the test of learning better through something like that? And I'm not working on that. Maybe I should be working on that. Or even the example number 2 is, things like the Spot robot, things like all of these different technology things. For me, are those things secure? And of course, right, Boston Dynamics is a great company. They have great processes. I'm pretty sure that Spot robot is really, really secure. But for me, that's sort of the next thing for me is, for all these different things you're being attracted to, and you're purchasing these new shiny things, are those things secure? Have they been, built with software that's secure? Are they connecting to things securely? Are you going to have a problem where that's going to be a surface, right, on a tech surface, somebody's going to compromise you across, and then all of a sudden now your company is compromised, right? So it's very easy to sort of jump ahead and try to be innovative, but we forget that it's a full solution, right? That has to be at the right price, does the right thing, solves the right problem, is secure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not just it's not as easy as we think it is, because everything in our industry is pretty hard, right? Again, we're building buildings, and that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I think that there's actually a bunch of very cool companies that try to do, I guess, augmented training, certain training, right? Different different training seminars or webinars, right? From remotely from the construction site. So how people can operate tools better, literally sit on a tool, operate the heavy machinery and things like that. And that's tapping in a little bit to an extent into the personalized learning space, right? Or teaching people certain skill sets that might be required. And I think it's an important perspective, because really I think also I'm a big believer that construction technology at some point is going to break through. There's going to be some sort of level of disruption within the industry. And there's always this misconception of what's going to happen, when all this new types of machinery, robotics are going to be introduced. And we actually
other dishes are already there. Yeah, other dishes are already there, right? There's a squid robot for Amazon. There's I forget the name of the other robot that unloads trucks, right? DHL just had that announcement about one of their, I think it's called Larry or some strange name. I don't remember the name of the robot, but yeah, DHL already has that, in their warehouses, where there's a specific robot that unloads the trucks. And Amazon has had this, the other floor robots already in place for many years, and the floor robots just bring the baskets to the sorters, right? And they're also working on the squid robot, which actually goes up into their vertical cabinets, right, and brings boxes down. So other industries are already there, and like you said, I wonder what the tipping point is going to be for us. Is it going to be automated, machinery, backhoes? Payloaders, what's it going to be? I don't know. I don't have a magic crystal ball. I wouldn't be able to tell you that.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it, right? So there's this kind of misconception of robotics are coming over to take our jobs. We've addressed this with a bunch of different people multiple times, and and that's one of the reasons why we also put together an article to kind of try to address it from our limited perspective, of what it is. But the main line of argument is robots are definitely going to probably change the way that we see traditional construction sites. But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to lead to the fact that there's going to be a lot of mass unemployment. Just people's jobs are going to be repurposed, right? Instead of digging, or instead of in doing some of the manual labor, you're going to have to operate a robot. And this is why it kind of taps into that importance of having a more personalized training in construction, so that people could learn new sets of skills fairly quickly at scale. So I just find this I'm really happy that we had these different points. We touched on so many points, we pretty much ran out of time. So unfortunately,
I have one last point, and I think it's very very great for closing here. I think for me, to your point, right, that if you picture yourself, and this is sort of a crazy example, but it's a good example. If you think of the movie Iron Man with Tony, the Tony Stark character, right? If you just rewatch that movie just one more time, the first Iron Man movie, in the movie, the character, he sketches the Iron Man suit. He goes into his lab, and then he goes into a piece of software that does a hologram of the grip. He designs the grip. Then he's able to make the boot, and he's soldering the boot in the movie. He's actually, he's using his hands to solder the boot. And then he prototypes and he tests the boots. He tests the flying piece of the suit. But when he's done, he then sends it to the automated assembly in the middle of the night to be assembled by a robot somewhere else, because they run 24/7. He sends that off to be assembled in the automated assembly plant, and then he goes out to a party. So I think, to your point, I mean, that for me is this whole thing, right? That we're not being replaced. I'm just going to have assistants now, and I'm going to be able to extend the things that I can do to more time, more capacity, more scale. So if people rewatch that little movie, they'll see, that, hey, it's going to be pretty awesome to be able to have that extension of yourself, right? Because I think you'll be able to do more.
1,000,000%. Yeah, we're going to be, it's also when you relate it to the growing needs of the world. We need to do more. It's not even a question. Yes. And I love the example. It's a really good example. And everybody rewatch. You
got to learn how to solder. You got to learn how to solder that. Yeah.
Yeah, learn how to solder. So I want to wrap up, and Oscar, I want to say thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I really hope all you guys found this insightful and interesting. Leave comments, share, likes, just let us know any questions you have so that we could answer them or address them either now and in the future in the comments as well, or in future podcasts. Thank you guys very much for participating. Oscar, thank you very much. Really appreciate your participation.
Thanks, Leah. Have a good one.